And again, the big experience of landing at night on a carrier was a whole thing in itself. And again, God bless the guy in the back to ride through that for the first time.
Thanks.
So we get our night landings and all that other stuff, and then you end up going to a fleet squadron.
16, 15,000,
But yeah, and then you'd learn to cheat the fly airplane when you went to the fleet, because in the RAG, it would be, you don't do anything with the flaps. You get kind of a slow flight, whether it's a scissors or a loop or whatever. As soon as you got to the fleet squadron, and some of the guys are really good, they let you clue in. You probably could crack a little bit of flap in there while you're out, and that's going to give you whatever needed to beat your opponent, the other F-14 you're fighting against in the squadron, type of thing. But if that was done wrong, a torque tube could break, and then maintenance has got to fix that, and that whole thing. So, yeah, no, I enjoyed flying that airplane. So
I would imagine, and obviously you didn't fly any combat. Different time period. I mean, you were worried about the Soviets rolling through Europe, and I think you did have a couple of encounters, at least.
Yeah. So
Soviets.
Yeah, the one thing that I, probably before that occurs, I end up going through, like I said, finishing up the RAG, and again, the big experience of landing at night on a carrier was a whole thing in itself. And again, God bless the guy in the back to ride through that for the first time.
Thanks.
So we get our night landings and all that other stuff, and then you end up going to a fleet squadron, and I kind of got out before I got involved in some sort of leadership in squadron specifically, but it was related to me. It was like a draft, NFL draft, where these fleet squadrons would get your reputation of the different RAG students. And if somebody got a kind of a high performer, one squadron the last go around, they kind of were at the bottom, and then it ends up, trying to disperse the talent pool best it can across the Pacific squadrons at the time at Miramar. And I ended up going to the F2. The squadron skipper was the XO at Top Gun when I was there as stash ensign. There were two 04s that were on the staff, so I was kind of a known quantity, and I ended up going to that squadron. And so that was fantastic, because again, just those three quality individuals, and there were, everybody in that squadron was awesome, but it was good to be placed in a squadron, and the F2 did really well when I was there. They were one of their top missile squadron. We did well there. So I went there, and within about a year, I ended up going to Top Gun as a student, probably one of the most junior pilots to go through as a student. I think they needed a waiver at the time, if memory serves. So I was able to do that fairly early in my fleet tour and go through. Things I remember about that, Rain, as a student at the time, it was all air to air. Now when you go through, you've got air to mud. It's an aspect doing strikes and all that. The F-14 was a pure air-to-air fighter, much to its demise. As politics played out, you start seeing the F-18, the do-it-all airplane, and you ended up seeing funding going there, and then the F-14 being sunsetted back in the early 2000s. Even though they started to drop bombs and stuff at the later years, I think the die was cast. Things about going through as a student, one of the greatest experiences was constant peg. If you're familiar with that, being able to fight against a MiG-21 or a MiG-23 for real. Here's kind of another small world story. So we go out, and of course, at the time, you brief over the phone, because I think we were in China Lake out of there, and then flapped to Nellis, the range real quick and back. And so you're on the phone, and I find out I'm talking to Z-Man is the call sign, and it's going to be a big...
Real quick, Z-Man's been on the podcast. So
it's him.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So, and so I go up, and it's the MiG-23, and you do all the stuff that you did at the time, and then you landed and debrief. So, fast forward to... gosh, it's probably 10 years ago or whatever. I'm at a small air show in Minnesota. I've got my youngest daughter along. And there's a tent with guys sell books, patches, and all that other stuff. And in there is, I guess it'd be Captain Peck, who started the 4477th, and he's got his book. He's on his book tour. And he's got a guy with him there, and it's a call sign Z-Man. And so, lo and behold, we did the compare, what were you doing? I was there in 86. What were you flying? Was that, that kind of thing. And I don't think I would have forgotten the guy's call sign, just given the flight, the circumstances, or whatever. Plus, it's a pretty memorable call sign in Z-Man. So, and the best deal about that, of course, is my daughter's with me, and she's like, become validated in her eyes a little bit more than just driving the Odyssey minivan around town taking her to soccer practice. So that, again, the small world thing was just amazing. So
that's super small world. I need to send him a text because he's getting close to having his book out, which I think is in spring of next year.
Okay.
But the concept peg, just a wild concept, the wild that it came together, and I can't imagine how cool it would have been to show up at the merge.
Yeah. Well, what they did in the initial was, okay, you had to do a size comparison. So that's the first thing. He would fly straight and level. You could take a look at him and fly around and get a feel for it. And then they did some performance stuff like 3, 2, 1, go. Everybody goes to full burner, and you can see the acceleration rate. And so that was kind of it. And then they did a defensive BFM setup, and then they would do an offensive one. And I think maybe we did one neutral. There wasn't a lot of gas. Those airplanes did not carry a lot of gas, and we were always flying overhead Tonopah. You could see it basically in case they had a problem. They could bail out and go hit whatever they got, 14,000 feet of runway there, or whatever it is. So. But again, to see an airplane with Soviet markings and all that stuff is just like, holy crap. And, they actually had a contingent of Navy and Marine Corps pilots there at any given time, maybe 3 on the staff. And I was one of the guys I flew with in VF2 was out there as one of the staff members at the 4477th. So, yeah, what a cool experience that was.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So
I'm sure nothing like that has happened today. So but,
yeah, at least that we know about.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That's a small world.
Yeah.
So I guess anything, and I guess jumping back really there's some thunder outside there. I don't know if that made it through the mic or not. Surprise.
Yeah.
Did your time at Top Gun? What was that like? And then I guess what year was this? Because obviously there might have been a movie that came out in and around this time period too, right? That made it pretty popular.
Yeah. So I went through as a student probably, I want to say in 86. And then ended up basically the rest of my VF2 career, after that with a couple surges over in the Pacific, and just all that kind of stuff that goes on in a typical F-14 squadron that deploys. And the ship we were on was the Ranger, and our sister squadron was VF1, the Wolfpack. So that kind of all occurs, and then you end up rolling for orders. And then I was asked back to become an instructor at Top Gun, and that was pretty much in 1988 through 1990.
Okay, you got out of the Navy in 90, right?
I did.
Okay. But let's jump into some of the Pacific, because obviously you got exposure with the constant peg, and then obviously on the cruise, you guys had a couple brushes with a few Soviet fighters, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So it's like 86, and we're on what was called a surge. So the Ranger, we did a couple things. We did one long Indian Ocean cruise, so I checked the block for over 100 days at sea, got my obligatory couple beers that, on beer call, which was a thing back then. But before that, we did Team Spirit, which was a Korean exercise, go over and show force that regard. And then we did some surge and, trying to get across the Pacific without radiating.